Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about RTI, our multi-tiered system of supports. I recommend that you download the Model 1 the response to intervention model that you see in your news um, section of your course. This way you can take notes as you listen to the lecture. Okay? All right, so today we're going to talk about RTI, or MTSS, and they're interchangeably. There are other forms of multi-tiered systems of supports, but we're really going to focus in on RTI. It's a three-tiered model, and if you look at my model here, I have it inverted because I believe it's more like a funnel where you put all students into the funnel, and then as you need more services, then it's less students are needing services at the tier 2 and the tier 3 level. Okay? That's not where I wanted to be. Let's get back to the beginning. Everything is at the end. All right, so we're there again at the beginning. What to do with Egbert? So you have a student in your classroom and he is behind in reading. His progress is much slower than the rest of his peers, and he's likely to miss the benchmark at the third grade at the high stakes testing grade. He's distractible, inattentive, disruptive, and so we're going to need to do something to help with his behavior and with his reading. So what happens next? According to the ESSA, No Child Left Behind, IDEA, etc., the student must be provided high quality instruction and behavior interventions that are matched to the student, and must provide frequent progress monitoring and formative evaluation, and is applied to individual educational decisions for that student. Which means that the schools must allocate and align resources to deliver these interventions. Why RTI? Because RTI is found to be much more effective than the old way that we did things. It's the wait and hope, or wait to fail method, and that we didn't really see any good progress, and we didn't have an exit strategy for students that were placed in special education. Also, we saw students that we overrepresented the number of students. Currently, federally, we're around 12 to 13% special education population. In the state of Texas, it's about the same. There was 15 to 20% several years ago. Some old assumptions about disability evaluations and disabilities. You can read through these. Response to intervention was passed in 2004 with IDEA's reauthorization. And this is what it says about that. You must show the child did not respond, or the child responded to scientific research-based intervention as part of the evaluation. When we went to the regulations, it says as part of the referral process. So this is all the stuff that happens prior to the referral for a full individual evaluation for possible special education services. So this has to happen in the general education program. Tier 1, it's universal for all students. It's preventative, it's proactive. It affects 80 to 90% of the students. It uses high quality, scientifically based classroom instruction, such as differentiated instruction, universal design for learning, those kind of things. You assess 3 times a year, at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and at the final part of the year. And you should be provided ongoing professional development to implement these interventions. Again, general education is scientifically based, explicit instruction, systematically placed and implemented, and it's mutually supported. So this is an overview of Tier 1 interventions. If you have a concern about a student, you begin working with that student in your classroom, providing differentiated instructions. Then you keep a record of that, and that way, if the student does not respond to those interventions, then you can provide that information on to the Tier 2 intervention team to move the student to a more intensive intervention strategy. Remember, as a teacher, you can do classroom interventions at any time with anyone that you have a concern about. So differentiated instruction, universal design, etc. could be done without any kind of plan in place. I hope that empowers you. Some academic interventions that are usually at Tier 1. Some more information. And here's some information about what are some benchmark items for different grade levels. All right, methodology and explicit instruction. You're going to model, systematically teach, directly instruct, etc., and providing automatic and consistent feedback for the students. Some more information about benchmarks. Why behavior assessments? Because behavior is learned, and we need to teach what is expected of them in the classroom. And so it's important that they learn appropriate behaviors. And we do it the same way we do academic interventions. These are some implications of behavior. You guys can look at that. So summary of Tier 1. So now then, let's talk about Tier 2. It's targeted instruction for small groups, like 3 to 5 students with one teacher. This is usually with an intervention specialist. So it depends on your school district how you do that. It's supplemental. It means that you will add to what you're already doing in the general education program. It is, you increase the evaluation to 2 times per month from 3 times a year. And that way we can be more nimble about changing the interventions. And Tier 3 is more intense, and it's students about 1-to-1 with an intervention specialist or 2-to-1 with an intervention specialist. We evaluate twice a week, making this much more intense. So this is the features of the Tier 2 process. You can read through this. It's supplemental to what you're already doing at the previous tiers. And it uses a problem-solving team. It's outside of the classroom setting. These are the characteristics. And so this is an overview of Tier 2, supplemental instruction, targeted supplemental instruction. Behavior is the same way. So let's look at Egbert. We mentioned Egbert at the beginning. This is his current benchmark. When they did words correct per minute, Egbert was 11. The class was at 24. You can see Egbert is behind 13 words correct per minute. So we're going to come up with a benchmark rate for the class, and then a goal line for Egbert. So the benchmark is, you can see it here, by the end of 20 weeks, he should be 30 word, the class will be 30 words more per minute, so that will be 54. For Egbert, that is an expected 1.5 word growth per week. That's the rate of learning for the regular class. And for Egbert, to get to the goal, he needs to learn 2 words growth per minute. That's his learning rate. So let's look and see what happens with Egbert if we do absolutely nothing at the first 4 weeks. And we're just doing whatever's happening in the classroom, maybe tried some differentiated strategies, and we see Egbert is the red line here. Egbert is not being successful. He's not demonstrating a response to the intervention, a positive response. So what do we do here? If you said we change the intervention and make it more intense, that's right, we move him to tier 2, we change the intervention and make it more intense. Then, let's see what happens over the next few weeks with him at tier 2. We could see that Egbert is now making good progress. And in fact, if you extrapolate this out, he's going to make a much better progress than his peers. So what do you think we need to do at week 8? We're going to change the goal. We're going to say Egbert's going to be at a higher goal, but we're going to continue with these interventions. So there we go. That's his goal line now is higher. This was his previous goal line. Now the blue is light blue is his new goal line. So let's see what's happened as we continue with the tier 2 interventions for Egbert. And as he goes along after the 20 weeks, he's at 60 words correct per minute. So he has really made good progress. What we want to do down about 16 weeks is starting to fade the tier 2 interventions and see if Egbert continues to make progress. If he drops below, you can always add the tier 2 interventions back in. You don't have to wait for him to fail for 3 or 4 weeks. We just go back in and add those interventions. So, we've seen Egbert make good progress. We get him back to what is happening in the general ed classroom. No longer is he at tier 2, he's at tier 1 with everybody else. This is the President's Commission on Special Education said that we want to prevent special education placement, and see with Egbert we did that. Now then, we have his twin sister Egberta. I'm not being very creative here. Similar performance in reading, no behavioral issues. She's quiet, cooperative, and does not disrupt the class. And she would not normally be referred to a teacher, but she was referred because of universal screening. So it's the same thing. 11 words correct per minute for Egberta, 2 words growth per week to get her to be on track with her classroom. Same scenario. But what happens with Egberta? It's a little bit different. So here, after the first 4 weeks, now then, let's see, what are we going to do here? We're going to change the intervention. And this is what happens with Egberta. We don't see her progression, do we? We see her actually staying below her goal line. So what do we do at week 8? We change the intervention again and see if that works, and we don't see anything. So then at week 14 we'll change the intervention. We see that she's still, and move her to tier 3. And then what do you think we need to do at at 20 weeks, where she did not meet the goal of her interventions? She did not respond appropriately to her intervention. So now then we need to make a referral for a full individual evaluation for Egberta. levels differences, rate differences. We've impacted all this. What we need to do is need to rule out that she's not intellectually disabled, doesn't have a health issue, etc. We do that through the next steps. But at Tier 3, we've increased the intensity. It's supplemental to Tier 2 and Tier 1. It's increased frequency, and it's a smaller intervention size, 1-to-1 or 2-to-1. Most important parts of Tier 3, it's the most intensive phase of the RTI process. As with Tier 2, it's imperative that we prove that the intervention was carried out with fidelity. And if we can prove that, then we show that she did not respond appropriately to the intervention. Tier 3 overview. Now then, we're going to refer for special education evaluation for possible services. We're going to look at levels of skills, patterns of skills, strengths and deficits, progress, outcomes, etc. With the old models, we just did testing and hoped that we got a good identification of her problems and could come up with a good plan. But if you know, I've noticed very rarely do we see students exited from the special education program. Hopefully, with using this kind of progress monitoring model, we can see students being exited from the program more often. Old model was did use some cognitive processing. That's still important, but we need to look at elements of how the interventions affected her. Cognitive process gives you strengths and weaknesses, which is really important because we need to know those strengths and weaknesses. And we need to improve accuracy of identification and improve the interventions. A full individual intervention is that after we've tried everything in the general education program with the RTI process and we've ruled out health and vision, hearing, social, emotional, and general intelligence, then we have determined that there is a learning disability. Okay, screening is important. So this is a matrix to see if we've got all the information necessary to make a full referral and a full determination after Tier 3. Okay, using the RTI process in special education programs, the response to intervention, progress monitoring, you can see that it's the same thing we do in special education. Very similar. We need to have where they are currently functioning, so you know where they are at, where they're engaged in the general education curriculum, and where they need to be. We need to have measurable annual goals. What is growth for a student? And so we can measure those goals and compare them to the testing that goes alongside. And specially designed instruction, that's the uniqueness of special education. And we make sure it meets the unique needs of the student. Special education, final remarks. Special education is effective if it's implemented correctly. It is a set of services brought to the student. It is not a place where the student goes. It is integrated with general education curriculum. There is accountability. We implement scientifically based interventions. We have goals. We monitor progress and use formative evaluation, and we have exit criteria that the student can be exited from the program and, if necessary, put back in as the need arises. Critical skills for you and for the team, problem-solving skills, curriculum-based measurement, instructional interventions, behavioral change interventions, relationship skills, and tailoring the assessment to the issues at hand. So that is a quick overview of RTI, and I'll talk about evidence-based practices with students with disabilities later in this module. All right, you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.